All right. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another stream. And I know it's been a couple days since we last streamed. The reason for that is because I just had family come down over the weekend just to, see me, and my birthday just passed and everything. So I was just seeing family over the weekend, everything. So I was like, okay, I'm seeing family over the weekend. I'm probably not going to be streaming for a couple days just because, well, seeing family kind of takes priority over streaming, unfortunately. And everything seemed normal, everything seemed fine, everything seemed good. I'm like, okay, I can take a couple days, not stream, be with family, and everything should be fine, right? Now, I know I did miss my daily upload streak and everything that I've had the last year and a half, so apologies on that, but we did still have some uploads going out and everything, but it's not daily anymore. But getting back into it, now that the weekend is over, but I was like, okay, should be a normal weekend, everything should be fine, right? We're able to spend a couple days off stream, off camera, just take a break from daily streaming, be with family, right? We're able to do that, right? No. Unfortunately not. Of all weekends for us to say, all right, we're taking a break from streaming and seeing family, of all weekends, there was a new Steel Wool interview that came out. So that means there's a lot more deep dive info for the Secret of the Mimic game that is coming out in less than a month. So that is what we're going to be reacting to. I was not planning on reacting to this, and I was not planning on any more Secret of the Mimic, stuff until the release date. Because if I'm being honest, we reacted to the trailer on stream, what was it, February or March? We reacted to the trailer, the full in-depth trailer, we went frame by frame on it. That was February, March, and we are less than a month away from the release date, so surely there's not going to be any more trailers. Pretty much I feels like the story of what we've been talking about, what we've been at least guessing from the teaser trailer, right? That's what we're probably going to be running with it until the game launches. Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, Steel Wool wanted to release a little bit more, apparently big info, less than a month before the release date. So without further ado, we're going to be reacting to it and seeing what this new info for Secret of the Mimic game is going to be all about. So alright, I know I have a little microphone here, but this is not the microphone I'm going to be using for the streaming. I have this little microphone that I showed off in one of the most recent streams, and just got it. It's brand new, so hopefully it sounds good. It should be a lot higher of a quality microphone than what I've been using in the past. But I'm still, whenever you get a new microphone, you still have to worry about the kinks and, worry about a few audio settings and make sure it sounds as pitch perfect as possible. So I'm still playing with a few settings, playing around a little bit, but whatever. You don't care. Anyway, Secret of the Mimic info. All right, 3, 2, 1.
It's been a while since we've got any news about Secret of the Mimic, but recently, Dawko got an interview with the creative director of Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic, Evan Lampy, and it contains so much important information for everybody to know, including some lore we can use to speculate about what we're going to see in the game. So Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. First of all, make sure to go to Dawko's channel and watch the entire interview. Steel Wool was very kind to give this interview, and Dawko was very talented to make it that good. So I need you guys to go watch that video. So if I'm not going to cover the whole interview, what am I going to talk about? Well, first of all, there's some pretty important just information about the game that isn't necessarily lore relevant, but it's stuff that we all really needed to know, and we finally do, confirmed. First of all, the game is launching as a non-VR game. Steel Wool pushed back the VR version of Secret of the Mimic in order to focus in and polish the flat version of the game, which honestly, thank God. When Dawko asked about any lessons they learned from Help Wanted 2, even Evan Lampy said one of the biggest takeaways was that you really shouldn't launch these games as VR exclusives. At least, if you do, you're going to cut off a lot of the fan base's ability to be able to...
Right, because VR systems, whether you're talking about an HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, PlayStation VR headset you see right here, VR headsets are extremely expensive. And not only are they extremely expensive, but it's also a thing where you have to have a set dedicated space in order to play VR games. Like, it's not like you can play like on a console ever. Like, I'm just sitting here on my couch as a table, right here at my knees, and I can just play games, like normally, right? You can't really do that in a VR headspace. You have to have like a 6 by 10 foot empty space in order for you to walk around. Otherwise, you're going to run into tables and chairs and walls. And not only that, you're going to be running into stuff, but as someone who's played VR, not a lot, but as someone who has played VR a bit, I can tell you it is very, very, very easy to get lost and you totally forget where you are, right? I cannot tell you how many times I am oriented the right way, I'm staying in the space and everything, and then while playing the VR game, I then managed to hit a wall that's like behind me or something like that, because apparently while playing the VR game, I managed to orient myself around, and now I'm hitting the wall. So, expensive. You also have to have a dedicated space for VR. I would say that's another problem. Now, and I would say even for me as well when it comes to streaming, I haven't done VR streams, mainly because I know it takes a lot more manpower, CPU power. It's a lot more obtuse and intuitive to be able to stream VR, especially in quality. I have not even attempted to do that because I know how complicated it is. So hearing that the game is just going to be on console, at least alone, gives me hope that I probably will be streaming the game on launch in June. At least that is the hope. So yeah, I guess look forward to seeing a few streams from me and the Secret of the Game come out in June. Because yeah, that's something to worry about. Not because I'm scared of VR games, no. It's that if I want to play it, I would like to play it and stream it and show it off to you guys. And so we can all have, say, universe, shared experience. And VR, it's a lot more difficult to do that than just on straight console where you can sit on the couch and play the game. So that's great to hear. So yeah, potentially we will be streaming the game in June, so can't wait for that.
Play it. So many people when Help Wanted 2 came out said, "This is amazing, I can't play it, I don't own a VR set." And Evan Lampe confirmed that Steelwolf saw that, recognized it, and took it into consideration. So when picking one version of the game to optimize for release, they chose the flat one. He also talked about how the game is much more dense and claustrophobic than Security Breach was. Similar in a sense to Ruin, but unlike Ruin, it's just about as long as Security Breach.
Hold up, play that again? Hold up. Play it again?
The game is much more dense and claustrophobic than Security Breach was. Similar.
More dense and claustrophobic than... Oops, I did not mean to close out the window. I was going back to my OBS to make sure everything looks right and the PC is great. Okay. But more restricted than Security Breach. Interesting. Now, my head that goes to, one of the main problems of Security Breach. Now, there's a lot of things we can say about the issue of Security Breach. The game-breaking bugs, glitches, confusing story, things just being broken. For some reason, you get to 5 a.m., there is no longer a save station, so you can progress hours and hours of real in-game footage, but you die, especially to a game-breaking glitch, because the game was very, very broken on launch. It kills you, and you have to reset hours and hours and hours of progress, and that became very, very obtuse, and taking to a point where it's like, I don't want to see the secret burn trap ending, because I now have to repeat hours and hours and hours of my life to try to get to an ending. At this point, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to go up on YouTube, watch the 30-second ending, and then call it a day. I saved 10 hours of my life trying to get the same ending. Right? So it's more claustrophobic, because one of the things I had with Security Breach And I think I said this even streaming while playing it. Keep in mind, when I was playing it a year and a half to 2 hours after the game was released, so it wasn't as broken, wasn't as glitchy on release, which I kind of planned for that. I wanted to be a little bit more streamlined. But even I was confused. There's so many times, if you ever played Security Breach, you know, there are so many times where the game will tell you instruction, or hell, they won't even tell you anything. You're just told to go to this area. And the area that you're told to go to is an area you've never been before. So it's like, go to Rotzi Raceway. And you're like, okay, where is Rotzi Raceway? I've never been there before. How do I get there? Where is it? And then there's another time where, like, Freddy said, like, oh, I've marked on a location on your map of where to go and everything. You pull up the map, and there's nothing there. He didn't mark anything, right? So there's countless times that you're running through the Pizza Plets. Yeah, it's called an open world, but, you know, I feel like use the term open world for Security Breach is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because yeah, it's an open world, but to me, I think an open world where, yeah, you're able to explore and go around to places, sure, but it's also not confusing of where to go, right? You still have a sense of direction. But in Security Breach, yeah, it may be an open world, but it's because it's an open world, because it's so confusing, you have no idea where to go, so you might as well just explore everywhere because you have no idea where you're going.
In a sense to Ruin, but unlike Ruin, it's just about as long as Security Breach. Granted, these are estimates. We won't have good...
So, out just as long as Security Breach, so that means the game's about, what, 6 or 7 hours? Because Ruin's about, like, 3 or 4.
Playtime averages until thousands of people played upon release. But Evan Lampy said his estimate for how long the game takes to beat a normal once playthrough is about 8 to 10 hours.
I said 6 to 7, so okay.
But if you're going for a more completionist ending and trying to get all the information, then you're looking at closer to 15 to 20, which...
Like I said earlier, those 10 hours to 15, 20 hours. Based on a normal and completion ending. So this is how I interpret it. The normal ending is the bad ending where you leave the facility, you don't get the secret ending, you don't get the true ending of the game. The completion is the true ending, secret ending. Maybe you see Willie Vapton, maybe you see Henry, Bird Trap, the Blob, something. And those 7 to 10 hours, are you able to save? Please, Steel Wool, those 7 to 10 extra hours, please let us save our progress and don't have us repeat 7 to 10 hours of our life every single time we're trying to get the real ending. Please. Learn from your mistake in Security Breach.
Which, keep in mind, according to HowLongToBeat.com, Security Breach's main story takes 10 hours to beat. All routes takes about 17 hours, and 100%ing the game takes about 25.
25 asterisk because you once again had to, play through the game. You got to 5 a.m. You said, no, you want to stay at the Pizza Plets. That's okay, I'll stay at the Pizza Plets. Decommission either Rotzi or Chica, the animatronic you didn't get. Through your neural playthrough, the one animatronic that you left alone, decommission them, go down the burn trap room, and hope you don't follow a glitch and you die and you have to repeat hours of progress again.
So these numbers are pretty accurate. If anything, Security Breach seems maybe an hour or two longer, but how much of Security Breach's gameplay was just walking from point A to point B? One thing...
Okay, what I was saying before of how you're just running in a direction, you have no idea where you're going, you have no idea what the objective is or what to do, so you're kind of just aimlessly run around until you manage to find, oh, this is where I gotta go.
That was focused on a lot during this interview is how much more compact the map is. He mentioned that the perimeter of the building fits fully within Roxy Raceway, which on one hand does sound small, but he pointed out that there are not only several stories to this building, but there are smaller hallways, secret passageways, things you have to sneak around. One of the complaints about Security Breach was that it's so open that it's hard to make the player feel scared, whereas a map like this that's much more condensed and twisting and winding will have to cause you to turn a lot of corners, and who knows what'll be on the other end.
I don't think why... I heard a lot of complaints of Security Breach being not scary, and it isn't scary. I don't think I ever heard it being too big, so there's never a fear factor. That's why Security Breach wasn't scared. I've always pointed to Security Breach not being scared is the animatronic jump scares aren't even jump scares. They just appear, right? There's not even animation of a jump scare. So that's part of it. The animatronics are way too toy, figurine, plastic, shiny looking, too clean looking. So that's not scary either. It's also very, as you can see by this, frame, the Pizza Pletz is very, very vibrant and bright. There's a lot of neon colors, which in turn, since it's so bright, it kind of ruins the atmosphere. It's not as dark. Like, I know the stereotype out there is like, oh, horror movie or horror game, and everything is just dark. It's pitch black. You have a flashlight, and it just so happens to run out of power as you go down a very spooky, long hallway. Yes, that stuff is all stereotypical, but there is a reason why that's stereotypical. Dark rooms, dark hallways. Flashlight runs out of power as you're going down a dark hallway. There's a reason that's stereotypical is because it's scary, it's tense. Looking at this big room and all these neon lights isn't scary because there's nothing to be scared of because everything is bright lit. So what's there to be afraid of?
Oh, my poor sleeve. This is what I get for trying to actually dress nice for these videos. My sleeves. You wear one black turtleneck, I swear. So I tell the guy.
Like, I would say the one scary section, and it kind of alludes to my point as well, the one scary section of Security Breach was the Moon Man daycare room, where you have to go up and down the playground area, and you have to deactivate the 5 generators. It was dark. It was pitch black. You were in a very small, tight, confined space of being in those playground structures. It was scary. It was tense. It's the one time the game felt tense and scary, which, go figure.
They have covers. 15 all technicals. It's stuff that's super important to know before the game comes out and gives me a lot of peace of mind knowing that this is a dense and meaty game that we're getting to chew on, but I know as well as you that the main reason most of you clicked on this video is lore. And while there wasn't a lot of direct lore talked about for obvious spoiler reasons, the information we did get out of this interview can allow us to speculate as to what we might see in Secret of the Mimic. One of the most important things about the lore is the framework the lore is in, because to be able to successfully predict what's in the game, we need to know what amounts of lore we're working with, and by that I mean the games versus the books. And when Dawko asked Evan Lampe about questions related to the books, he said these two quotes at different points that I think are both very important for this conversation.
And we were developing the game kind of while these books are coming out. So yeah, I will say it's interesting. Again, I won't go into like the books and all of that, but it's interesting to work kind of in dual mediums.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point that he brought up of how Security Breach was working with the release date, was working in tandem with the books. Because that's another reason, that's a theory out there. It's just a theory, but that's why one of the theories is why Security Breach came out as broken as it did, and why people say there's different story that Steelwool had in mind. There's different story, different story, different story. Something changed from the original story idea to the release date of what we got. And it's because of that. The books and the game and how the release date correlated. Because there's some stuff that the books talked about in the release date that would have been fine. Because originally, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this. Security Breach was originally supposed to come out in late 2019, if I'm not mistaken. It was supposed to come out in 2019, and then it got delayed because there was a lot of ideas that Steel Wool was working with. Scott had caught in his own ideas, and it caused some issues, caused some delays. And it's like, okay, delay to 2020. Then obviously, we know what happened in 2020. No one could have predicted what happened in 2020. So 2020 came and went, no security breach for obvious reasons. Then early 2021, the game was supposed to come out, and then it gets delayed again. Then they're like, all right, late 2021, the game is supposed to come out, and it did. I want to say like December 15th or 16th of 2021. The game came out. Now, the reason why I brought that up is Security Breach was to come out in 2019. It got delayed until 2021 December release date. In that time frame, 2019 and 2021, the books are still coming out. There were still books throughout 2019, throughout all of 2020, 2021 to December. There were still books and things they were talking about in those chronological books that would have came out following Security Breach were now coming out before Security Breach because of all the delays. And some of the things that the books talked about was the Afton conglomeration trash monster, Baby having like black blood tentacles come out and being the new villain of the series. That Afton was no longer strong or anything like that. Baby was the new antagonist of the series. So stuff like that was happening in the books. At the time, that stuff was happening in the books when it would have happened following Security Breach, just to add context to what we saw in Security Breach. But now, because of delays, the stuff that was happening in the books made no sense, and I guess was spoiling what was supposed to be happening in Security Breach, so the story got delayed and changed until the 2021 release date. So I feel like Steel Wool learned their lesson that they had a story in mind, then the books kind of spoiled that ending, right? Because the book's coming out and because the game kept getting delayed and the time frame, the book still had to come out, and that caused the game to fall behind. So it's very interesting that they finally call it out. That's always been a theory. It's always been an idea to the community. But the fact that someone at Steel Wool brought it up for beta, I think is very, very interesting. And adds even more element to the theory of that's why the story changed so much for Security Breach.
I will say, if you've read the books, you don't know the full story.
So, what does this mean? To be clear, either of these statements are not a direct confirmation either way. But let's try to dissect what these sentences mean. As far as the working in dual mediums, that does make it seem like one story is being told twice in two different mediums, which again bolsters the argument that the Tales from the Pizzaplex books take place in the games. And then as far as his other sentence, you don't know the full story, to me the implication is that the books are part of the story, but there is more to it we haven't seen yet. All in all, I think both of these quotes reinforce the idea that at least the majority of the Tales from the Pizzaplex books take place within the games. So like I've been saying, I'm going to continue to assume that everything we've learned about the Mimic from the books is pretty much one-to-one with the game's timeline. And moving forward, if something comes out in Secret of the Mimic that goes against something we've seen in the books, I'm going to trust the games first, but I'm not going to throw out everything the books have told us.
I mean, just being honest here, you know, this game, Secret of the Mimic, is based off a book. It's not some new idea, new concept. The game is being based off a book that already exists. Just like how Into the Pit, the game came out following the release of a book, Into the Pit. And a lot of the game Into the Pit was factored in the game of what we got from the book. And I would imagine the same thing we said about the Secret of the Mimic with the Mimic story. Now, how far do we go with this? Who's to say? Like, I talked about it in the trailer when we were reacting to the trailer of the Secret of the Mimic, is a big part of the story is Edwin's son, David, runs out to the street, gets killed by a car, And that's what causes the Mimic robot software to start mimicking David, and that's caused Edwin to go on his rampage, beat and destroy the Mimic, and leave into the factory, abandon, cause the Mimic to go on a rampage and become a new villain. That's a big part of the story. And we see a car pull and drive past a road. Now, are those the same events? We won't know until the game releases, honestly. But it wouldn't surprise me because of what this game is based off of.
For example, if David is a slightly different age or dies in a different way. While that is significant and needs to be talked about, I don't think it necessitates that everything from the books is wrong. Frankly, the way I see this timeline is right now we don't have information about the Mimic in the games. So when I talk about my game's
I mean, we have some information about the Mimic. I mean, game purposes, the only time the Mimic has come to the forefront is, well, Ruin DLC. That someone, who knows who, we assume it to be Cassie's dad from FNAF VR Help 1 2. They locked the Mimic down under the Pizzaplex, and then obviously Cassie, throughout the game of Ruin, unlocked all security nodes and released the Mimic. Right. We assume Cassie's dad is the one who locked the Mimic down there, but once again, that's always been an assumption. We also know that the Mimic is very old technology and predates everything, all the animatronics we know throughout the series. We know Mimic's teeth is the same as Sun Man and Moon Man. Sun Drop and Moon Drop, the teeth are the exact same. So people point that detail of how the Mimic, Sun Drop, and Moon Drop all created by the same person at the same time. And then game-wise, I think that's it from what we know about the Mimic. I think that's it.
timeline, I'm filling it in with book information, and any game information that overlaps will replace it, and any game information that doesn't overlap will go alongside it. You know what I mean? And look, that's just my approach. I still think it's perfectly valid to assume that the books aren't fully accurate, or even are completely different, but there is enough overlap that they're still useful to take into account when trying to dissect the story of the games. Now,
you have to. At this point, you have to. And, you know, it's crazy that we're talking about this conversation again, but I guess we're bringing it up again, of how are the books canon, and the whole argument versus canon versus continuity. Are the books canon? Are the games canon? Are the books in a different continuity, different universe of the games? Are they in the same universe? A lot of clashing, a lot of very, very, very strong opinions on this subject. I'm going to say this again, right? And I'm going to be a dead horse, but I'm going to say this again of how I've always interpreted it. I've always interpreted game canon, game universe, this stuff happens in games that we play. Book canon, book universe, this is stuff we hear about in the books. Separate universes. But once details and ideas merge together, now you have one canon, one lore, one continuity, one timeline. Game universe, book universe, details merge. Those pieces are the lore, are the timeline, are fair game for lore and Easter eggs. That's how I view it. But you have to acknowledge the book's existence. Like, I know way back then when we had the first original trilogy of books from FNAF 4 to Sister Location in 2015, the original trilogy of books, everyone wanted to dismiss the books because it's not canon. It's its own separate universe. It's just for fun. It's not meant to be any lore implications. Right? Back in 2015. And now there's like, what, 3 times, 4 times as many books as games in the series. At some point, it's too hard to ignore.
now that being said, one of the bigger questions surrounding all of this is what exactly did he mean by "you don't know the full story yet"? Well, in the story The Mimic, there are several missing bits of information. What? Well, the original story The Mimic shows us Edwin making the Mimic, his son David dying, and one of Fazbear's attempts to collect the Mimic. However, there's plenty of parts of this story that don't appear in the story. For one, we don't know what happens to Edwin after he beats the Mimic. After David dies, the Mimic continues to mimic his son David, but that sets Edwin off on a grief-filled tangent and he just beats the hell out of the Mimic. But afterwards he goes missing. I would assume he died, but he appears later in the storyteller as an old man. So he did survive whatever happens next. I guess he just disappeared. We also
The way I think about it is Edwin and Henry the same person, or are they different? And that's one thing that I hope the Mimic solves and tells us explicitly. Edwin and Henry, same person, different person. Just like the whole book canon, game canon, same universe, alternate universe, lore, continuity, arguments. Something that people are very, very, very up in arms about is Edwin and Henry. Same person, different person. And just like the lore continuity argument, I'm going to share my opinion again. I think they're the same person. Henry and Edwin are the same person. That's just what makes sense to me. It's Occam's razor. It's the simplest answer is the right answer. Right? The simplest answer is the right answer because their backstories are quite literally a one-to-one parallel. And you cannot get mad at people thinking that they're the same person because their storylines quite literally are the same. Edwin and Henry, I'm going to repeat this again. Edwin and Henry are both genius animatronic inventors. They're both linked to Fazbear Entertainment later on. They both have a young child who then dies following a tragic death, right? Henry's daughter, Charlie Charlotte, dies to William Afton in the back alleyway in the Pizza Pletz, or one of the pizzerias, I think it's Fredbear Diner. But Charlie Charlotte is locked in the alleyway. William Afton drives the purple car, kills Charlie Charlotte, and then drives away. We see that Midnight Motorist, right? And the puppet minigame. And then David, as we said earlier in the stream, and many other streams before, runs down the street, dies by getting hit by a car. And then following that, two grieving fathers put their grief into robot creations in the likeness of their dead child. Charlie Charlotte was the fourth closet where it's multiple robot versions of his daughter through different age groups. You know, toddler, baby, kid, older kid, preteen, teen, young adult, adult, right? Versions of the Charlie Charlotte bot throughout different age groups. One of those robot creations is Baby, the baby we know from Sister Location, who's a villain. David's case, the Mimic robot creation starts mimicking David. Edwin, as a green father, sees that and beats the heck out of the robot creation, fills it with agony and grief. Said, now infused agony and grief robot creation now goes on a killing rampage and is a villain now. So, quite literally, a one-to-one parallel. What's up, Dakota? Appreciate you for the 15 months. And I also don't know when you came into the stream because I was currently going on a rant about Edwin versus Henry, if they're the same person or not. So I want to acknowledge it. I did not forget you. Appreciate it.
Also know that while two Fazbear crews were sent to collect the Mimic, neither of them were successful. We don't know if there were any crews sent before the first one we know about, and we don't know which crews were sent after the one we read about died. We also don't know what Fazbear did with the Mimic once they collected it. All we know is that it ends up in a hidden storage somewhere. So my guess for what, if you've read the books you don't know the full story means, is that the story of this game is going to focus on one of those blank spaces that we don't have information for. Now, how the books are being handled aside, there was some bits of lore that were teased in this interview. Again, the majority of it wasn't said for spoiler reasons, obviously, but we have information about the nature of the lore that we can use to speculate. When describing the lore of the game, Evan Lampe said that the main story was approachable so much that any new player could play the game and understand what was happening.
I'm trying to think. Because it feels like it's been so long since we've had a FNAF game like that, where anyone is able to boot up this game. They could be a new fan, old fan like me who's been around since the very beginning. You're able to open this new game, play it, and understand what's going on. FNAF 1, the reason why it's so nostalgic, so perfect, is because, yes, you can be someone like me who dives into every lore, every Easter egg, and has been followed around the lore time on this series for over the last 11, 12 years. But you also can play in a very simple kind of way, right? FNAF 1, you're told about you're a night security guard at a haunted animatronic pizzeria establishment. They are no longer able to, free roam the building following a mysterious Bite of 87 incident where an animatronic bit someone during business hours, causing them to get shut down and no longer able to free roam. And you have to play 5 nights from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. trying to survive, limited power. That's it. And you're paid below minimum wage. And then there's newspaper clippings of mysterious kids going missing. Right? That's it. Obviously, the story gets way more complicated than that over the last 11, 12 years. But someone just playing Five Nights at Freddy's 1 have no idea what the difference between a Ned Bear, a Fred Bear, Golden Freddy, Rockstar Freddy, Phantom Freddy, Shadow Freddy, Freddles, Rockstar Freddy, Twisted Freddy, right? Lefty, FNAF 1 Freddy, Glamrock Freddy, right? They don't know the difference between any of those Freddys, right? They're able to play the game and understand what's going on. FNAF 2, kind of the same deal. FNAF 3, I don't think so. FNAF 4, longtime fans like me still don't know what that is, so that is automatically out. FNAF 5, maybe? I think, could the casual player understand what's going on in this location? Never thought about that. I mean, there's some Easter eggs and some things that a casual player who has no idea what's going on would not understand. Like, it being a big deal, the end of Night 5 in this location, you are wheeled on like a conveyor belt by, following getting scooped. And the shadow figure in the picture, their eyes open and the purple light lights up. Obviously, casual players who have no idea what's going on don't understand why a purple eye is important. They have no idea what's going on. The opening dialogue saying, that baby can, inflate balloons at her fingertips and dispense ice cream. And then saying, those design choices you're clear about, Mr. Afton. A casual player is not going to know what Mr. Afton is and why that's important. So I guess this location doesn't fit in the bill. FNAF 6 definitely doesn't, because that game is totally meant for the longtime fans. Custom Night, no, because death lines are all about the fans again. Security Breach, no. Help Wanted, I'll say Help Wanted, yeah. Help Wanted 1, I think any casual player can enjoy it, because it quite literally is a reboot of the series. So I would say that fits the bill. Security Breach, absolutely not. Ruin, no. And then Into the Pit, maybe. I'm curious if, I would say Into the Pit's the one I'm curious on. Can a casual fan play and enjoy and understand what's going on Into the Pit? Or would they be confused? I think at minimum, FNAF 1 and VR Help Wanted 1 are the two games that any casual player can play, understand what's going on. Obviously, you're rewarded if you're someone like me who's been around the series and has looked at timeline and lore and Easter eggs the last 11, 12 years. We get way more enjoyment out of it. But I'm saying, from a basic casual player who has no idea what's going on, could they enjoy and understand what's going on? FNAF 1, yes. VR Help Wanted 1, yes. Into the Pit, maybe. 2.5, potentially 3.
Which, obviously, like, that's important for any game. You want them to be dense and lore-filled for any veteran fan to appreciate, but you don't want to alienate new players. You need...
Also, same token, this is how I felt the FNAF movies were. FNAF 1 movie, and I'm assuming it's the same thing with FNAF 2, but in lead up to the FNAF 1 movie, this was definitely a big sticking point. Is because you have to satisfy multiple audiences. And that's why I think why Scott posted on Reddit of like the 9 or 10 different screenplay scripts he was writing about. One of them was the Cassidy script, which he said something like, it would appease the longtime fans who are wanted a very lore-dense movie, right? They would be able to get something out of it and enjoy it. But the casual fan who has no idea what Five Nights at Freddy's is just going to the movie just because they enjoy it, or is going to the movie because of October Halloween season. They watch this movie, they have no idea who Cassidy is, or, you know, spirits, or anything going on. It will be so confusing. So, you have to find something, you have to find a weird balancing act, where you have to appease the longtime fans, who have been here since the very beginning. You have to appease the new fans, who are like, post-VR, Help Wanted 1 to Secure Breach, that era. And then you have fans, movie fans, who have no idea what Five Nights at Freddy's is. You have to also find a way for them to get something enjoy out of it.
To make your games approachable to new players or your franchise will die. But he stressed that this game was made for FNAF fans. And the deeper you look, the deeper the lore and references to other games will get. And he said himself it is filled with connections to previous games and other Fazbear things.
Deeper lore is hidden within that connects to past FNAF games. Now, question. Connects to past FNAF games. That's interesting. How so? Because, if I'm not mistaken, Secret of the Mimic, from a time perspective, is the earliest game in the series. Right? It's taking place in the 70s. Right? Like mid-70s. Is Secret of the Mimic coming out? We have, you know, FNAF 2, 1983. Or, no, excuse me. FNAF 4, 1983. FNAF 2, 1987. FNAF 1, 1992, 1993. FNAF 3 is 20 years following the original location, so, you know, that's later on. The VR, Help Wanted, Secure Breach, Pizza Pletz arrows like 2020, 2030s, right? FNAF 6, we assume to be in the same time frame because HRY 223. We assume HRY is Henry, and 223 could be the year, so like 2023 or something like that. So, how can this connect to past games when this is the first game in the timeline? That I'm curious on.
Which is kind of exactly what I was hoping for. One of the reasons I think Help Wanted 2 didn't stick with the fanbase as much is because besides the two endings, a lot of that game was fairly self-explanatory. Within a week, we all kind of agreed who the main character was, what we were doing, and the greater context of when the game takes place. The only real questions that stand out from Help Wanted 2 are what do the endings exactly mean, and we don't have the information in Help Wanted 2 to solve it, so it's kind of a back burner thing. Once we get newer games after that point in the timeline, we can look back at those endings and try to piece them together.
I feel like the Cassie ending was very self-explanatory when we first saw it. It's the Vanny vending machine, arcade machine, ending, or I meant to say claw machine, not vending machine. The Vandy claw machine ending is something that's so confusing because it's so, I don't want to say obtuse. It's so symbolic. I think that's the right word to put it. It's so symbolic to a point of confusion.
because of that, there weren't any mysteries to solve within the game itself. So one of my biggest hopes was that Secret of the Mimic would be filled with these, and from what it seems like, this game is going to be filled with not only secrets to solve within the game, but secrets that connect to other previous games, which is huge. And as far as how the lore was written, Evan described it as a co-creation between Steelwool and Scott Cawthon himself. He later went on to describe it as sort of a pyramid, where everyone's working together, but Scott is leading the charge. So, as is always, if you don't like the story of this game, don't blame Steelwool.
So, what that means is, that kind of sounds like it's a lot like the movie again, where, is it Emma or Emily? Hold on. Emma Tammy, that's it. Emma Tammy is the director for the FNAF movies. And obviously, as a director, you have creative control, you have ideas, you have a voice, and how a movie gets made. Now, Scott Cawthon, because, you know, he's the man in charge, he's the one that created Five Nights at Freddy's, he had the final say in how things were ran, how things were operated. Like, Emma can have ideas of what to do, but Scott Cawthon got the final approval because it's his own IP, its own, right? So I feel like it's the same thing here, where Steelwool can have ideas, Scott Cawthon can have ideas, and has final approval.
Well, it ain't their fault. Like, this still is Scott Cawthon writing the majority of these games. It is insane to me how many people online, especially on FNAF TikTok, which is a barren wasteland, I'll have you know. There's like 3 really cool creators and the rest is insanity. But it's insane to me how many people are like, man, modern FNAF sucks ever since Steelwool took over all of the writing and Scott retired. Like, that's, you're living in a separate reality. None of that is true.
Agreed. Right. Like, first of all, I'm not saying it's like badmouth Scott Cawthon or anything like that. Quite the opposite. I want to meet Scott. Please. Right. I want to meet Scott Cawthon so bad. But anyways. This whole idea that Steelwool ruined FNAF and the storyline makes no sense. It's so complicated. Right. The modern lore is so complicated. And it's like Steelwool's fault. I'm like, dude, do you remember 2015? Right. To me, this is something, like, if you have that argument on the Switch on like TikTok, you must be a new fan. Right? You must be. You must be a new fan because you were not around in 2015. You were not around. I was around in 2015. And I can tell you the conversations that was had in 2015. Once again, in 2015, we had the original trilogy of books that everyone wanted to burn off to hell and never acknowledge their existence because it lured away from the timeline, lured away from the story. There's a lot of ideas in the books that made no sense. It was the first time we had literal robot kids and everything. Right? It made no sense. And it was once the whole idea of the books being a separate universe and people ignoring the books altogether. Since the location came out, it was all sci-fi, futuristic animatronics, voice mimics, sound illusion discs, sound illusion lores, right? Robot pyramids that wheel around a pizza pletz to simulate children because of their temperature is 98.6. So, saying the lore and the story makes no sense now and the modern lore is terrible, it was a lot better back then. Do you not remember what 2015 was like? Where we went from FNAF 4, which once again people still don't understand what's going on, to this location which is sci-fi and you have sound illusion discs and robot people. Do you not remember 2015? Because I remember it.
Now, here's the thing that actually gives us a lot of information on what we might be seeing connect to the other games. And it all stems from one side comment from that interview. Evan confirmed that Murray's Costume Manor is not a Fazbear facility, which we kind of already assumed. He's stated to be a contractor in the trailer, so it would make sense that his establishment isn't part of Fazbear's. But thinking about that a little bit further, That brings up a lot of questions for how this game will connect to the rest of the franchise, and it has to do with the technology within Murray's Costume Manor. To open up this question further, we got these two posters throughout the interview. Both
Lockdown, your data driver is the key. Where do you belong? Basic security, repair, creator, admin, executive.
of them very important, but I want to focus on the data driver itself. This device is a Murray original, and its tech is made to interact with several of the terminals throughout Murray's Costume Manor. Terminals that have the Helper program that looks a lot like an old version of Helpy. So if that is true, and these are all things created by Edwin Murray within a non-Fazbear facility, does that mean that all of this technology that later would turn into the Fazwrench and Helpy were originally created by Edwin Murray, and not Fazbear Entertainment? This links back to a question I answered on the Freddy Fazbear Pizza podcast that also comes out on this channel, submitted by Shannon, and the question boiled down to how much of Fazbear Entertainment's technology was originally created by Edwin. After all, Edwin Murray is a genius inventor, but up until now, we assumed the only genius inventor in Fazbear's was Henry Emily.
Once again, are they the same person? And I'm saying they are. They are the same person. Just saying.
He's the guy who made...
If they are not the same person, then you really have to convince me as to why it's so cruel then that the storylines are quite literally the exact same. You have to give me a reason as to why. Because to me, there's no valid reason why they're different people, but the storylines are quite literally the exact same thing.
The original Fazbear.
Just make a different backstory, and none of this Edwin versus Henry stuff would be happening. We would look at them as different people, but because their storylines are the same, that caused the connection.
Animatronics after all, but if we're talking about the Fazwrench, Helpy, the Mimic, and all of these other pieces of technology, then the name of the creator isn't Henry anymore. His name is Edwin. He made the Mimic, and it was difficult to put this warehouse together. But unfortunately, in the books, we don't know what happened after the Mimic was beaten. We don't know how much of his technology was taken by Fazbear. After all, if Edwin entered into a contract with Fazbear to create something and didn't, when they collected what he was working on, did they collect as much as they could as collateral? And since Edwin is MIA, he's not there to contest it. If so, the crux of all of this and how it might connect to the other games really comes down to how much of Fazbear technology began as an Edwin original. Because at least looking through this trailer, Helpy, the Fazwrench, and Music Man are all on that list. Where does that list end? If we see Fredbear or Spring Bonnie in this facility, does that mean Edwin made the spring locks and not William? After all, we know that Henry Emily made the original animatronics, but we always just kind of assumed that William made the spring locks because they were kind of worse. But it seems completely possible that Edwin Murray was the original creator of the spring lock suits, something we might find out in Secret of the Mimic.
I'm trying to think. So, William Afton and... I'm just going to go with it. William Afton and Henry are not tied to the spring lock suits. They didn't invent it. They were just retrieving that technology and then using it and then repurposing it. Interesting. I'm trying to think, was there ever a time where, like, it was outright confirmed from, like, a book or a game or something like that? Like, yeah, William Afton's the one who made the spring locks. Because we obviously know that the Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie are spring lock suits. And we know at the time, Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie are from Fredbear's Family Diner. Right? And we know Golden Bonnie was William Afton's creation. He was the one that wore that Golden Bonnie suit. But was he the one who made it? Or did they just accept it? Huh. That's interesting. That's something that no one has talked about, no one has asked. But if this game talks about that and says just outright that, yeah, the spring lock suits that you guys have known about since FNAF 3, yeah, throw everything out that you know about the spring lock suits from since FNAF 3, throw that all out the window, because we're now about to tell you everything that you've known is wrong. Interesting. Kind of gives a new meaning to the FNAF 3 ending, where William Afton is in the back room and then runs into the Golden Bonnie suit and gets spring locked to death. But then he is, in the kitchen area until he is found and then released as a horror attraction. Right? Kind of gives new meaning to that ending, doesn't it? If William Afton's not the one who made it. Interesting. Because, yeah, there's plenty of things that's like, yeah, property of Afton or property of Henry. The Springlock suits is not one that has been mentioned. Huh. Interesting. I guess we have to wait for less than a month to find out for sure if that's the case. And if that is, we're going to have some very, very fun conversations in Secret of the Mimic then.